I'm Sue. I'm currently in Arizona, and formerly, before I became an artist, so I was a corporate executive in the call center industry. So I'm the artist formerly known as VP. But I always did fiber or fabric or textile art. So people call it different things. Um, I always did that in order to switch off when I was in the corporate world. Would come home, I had kids, so by the time I got to relax at night, it was usually 10 at night, 11 at night, and I would sit and either knit or sew or crochet or felt or do some kind of fabric art for a couple of hours just to relax. And so it's kind of like oxygen for me in a way. So about 5 years ago, I had to have major spine surgery. My spine disintegrated essentially, and I was disabled and couldn't walk and couldn't use my arms, but I could use my hands. And so after the surgery, I basically decided that this was it. I was going to just go headlong into my art in order to stay sane and stay active. Well, as far as the doll part of my art, that actually started when I met Jim, my husband, who's a sculptor. And I had always made dolls, soft dolls of various kinds, and we wanted to experiment. And at our first date, I suggested that we make a doll, and we did, and the rest is history. So that's pretty much up to where I am now. And I'm in my, what I call my happy room right now, which is where all of my art supplies live, and where a collection of my dolls lives too. So I'd be happy to show them to you if you're interested.
Sure.
I drink tea by the pint. I'm British and I've never lost that ability. Okay, so let's start with Damiana. She is what I would consider a rework. I like to go to thrift stores and the Goodwill and Salvation Army and buy old discarded dolls and make them into another character and give them another life. And this is Damiana. She was reborn as a baby zombie doll. And when I do them, I also make sure that they're weighted sufficiently such that when you hold the babies, they actually feel about the weight of a regular baby. And she also has a baby's floppy head, as it should be. So that's Damiana. I'll show you a little bit more. And her dress was actually made out of two types of coffin liner fabric. The coffin liner was not recycled. That was new. This little guy is Tin Boy, and again, a recycled, reimagined little boy. And I kind of considered what might happen if Dorothy and the Tin Man in The Wizard of Oz had ever gotten together. And little Tin Boy, I believe, would be the result. Oops. Not sure if you can actually see his little hat there. Okay, this rework doll would take probably about, with all the sewing and painting, and I believe he took me about 50 or 60 hours to complete. He was quite complicated to do because there was a lot of reworking and getting the actual metallic plates on here, and also creating the metallic skull and all of these little accessories. So yeah, he was, I think, probably 60 hours would be about right. Now I'm going to take this and show you something else over. See if I can show you this. Can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So these guys, they're a collaboration with my husband, Jim, and he makes for me. Usually I'll have an idea about something I want to make. And like, for example, the plague doctor was as a result of COVID-19. I wanted to make an old-fashioned plague doctor from the Middle Ages. And so, you know, I'll tell Jim, oh, this is what I want to make. I need a head, hands, and feet. And he gives them to me. And then I carry on and make the body. Oh, and while I'm doing that, I have one here. This is not going to have polymer clay head, hands, and feet. This doll is going to be totally felted. And you can see it's an armature with wire. And so when he or she is finished, I haven't decided what it's going to be yet. It will be totally posable. Now, the other type of art that I do, I'm going to have to lift this up again. Like I said, I'm more of a fabric artist than just a doll artist. Something I'm working on right now. Can you see that? Okay, so that is all knitted and crocheted, and I don't know what I'm showing you here, but hopefully you can see it. I do these too. Do you see that? Can you see that? I understand. Anyway, that's the other type of stuff that I do. This is needlepoint. So I'll do the original, draw the original image, and then sew and create the pictures. So fabric art, textile art, anything of that arena. So the other thing I'm making right now is some overalls. So I tend to just go with the flow, whatever I feel like. About a year ago, I was heavily into political art. So my dolls got a little bit caustic and political, but usually They're pretty complex and detailed, but hopefully with a sense of fun. Most of my stuff is comic in some way. Well, you know what they say, you can take the girl out of England, but you can't take England out of the girl. I mean, usually I get inspired very much right now by nature, and being outside, is because I think that, you know, there's a lot of things happening in the world right now, and I feel energies and things, and it's all a bit overwhelming. So I tend to go out and sit on my patio and watch the hummingbirds, and, you know, usually that gets me to a place where I feel, yep, I can create something. I need to create something. But what I found with me particularly is that either my head is just stuffed full of things I need to make to get out of my head, and writing too. I do a lot of writing. Or I have no ideas at all, none. And that would be when I go out on the web and look at Pinterest or something, you know, to actually get kick-started. But for the most part, I've always got a running list of projects that I want to get to and things that I want to make. And right now, as you can tell by the needle points I showed you, there was a 2-year period where all I did was make needle points and give them away. Another time I spent, I think it was 3 years, making large wall hangings. One of them actually went on a traveling trunk tour of the United States. I gave that one away too. So kind of right now I am just coming out of a knitting and crochet and Tunisian crochet phase, and I'm going into doll making, which is why I've got my little hands and stuff sitting around me. Usually I want to try and, even though, as you say, the subject matter might be creepy, but I want them to give off this sensation of humor and lightness and not taking things seriously, you know? So I'm so pleased you said that. That's kind of what I was going for. Oh, again, my writing tends toward the humorous, but I write basically things that I've observed or things that we do as humans that I just find hysterically funny. And so I tend to do a lot of scribbling of that. Now, I have a book full of it. I also have a website, and 2020 was going to be the year that I started my blog, and I was just every day going to put out one of these silly observations, you know. Well, of course I didn't start my blog. It's 2021, I still haven't started it, but it isn't my goal for this year to at least post once a week on my blog. So hopefully that stuff will start getting out into the universe. But again, the theme of what I do there tends to be, look, don't take everything so seriously. You can find fun or humor or lightness in just about anything, even if it's dark. And I can always find dark humor anywhere. It's in the other room in one of the filing cabinets, but I actually, and this is a horrible story, but I actually about 3 years ago got rid of journals I'd kept for 20 years, which I would advise people not to do that. Even if you think your life has turned awful and you need things to change, don't get rid of your journals. So I've started doing that again, but not quite as avidly. But yeah, I can provide you stuff. I can email it to you. I have it, in the computer and also in my journal books. So I'll send you some. So this is the yarn that I used. And you can see that the yarn itself goes from all different colors, from greens to browns to purples to blues. And after you start knitting it, you can kind of get a feeling of where the colors are going to go to. So if you're knitting panels, then you can use different balls at different times to get the same color blend. It's a little bit complicated, but the yarn itself takes out a lot of the complication by just already coming pre-dyed that way. No, the felt also, I actually use, it has to be wool, pure wool, but it comes again pre-dyed in different colors. So for example, I'll start this hand with kind of old grungy scrap felt that I might have that isn't particularly good. And then when I'm going to finish it, I'll finish it with flesh color over the top. And you just poke it all in like this. And that's how you attach it to the wiring. Yes, the one that I'm working on right now, I'm not going to talk about it because I want it to bubble up, naturally. But one of the ideas that I'm thinking of right now is recreating dolls of, how do I put this? Powerful women. So, and I mean powerful in the way of like Mother Teresa, right? So one of the ideas I had was maybe to do a collection of obvious, strong women like Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Mother Teresa, Rosa Parks, But then there was also a thought that, you know what, maybe that's kind of being done to death. Everybody's doing that sort of stuff. So the other thought that I had, and who knows which way it will go, I may have a completely different idea this afternoon. The other thought I had was recreating some scenes from historical artwork. So like the Mona Lisa, the Scream, So I don't know, they're bubbling right now and nothing has come to the top. So we'll see what happens. When I grew up in England, I was born and raised in the northeast of England, which was a working class town of Irish Catholics. I was an Irish dancer when I was a little girl and, went into competitions and stuff like that. But I don't know, we didn't have a lot. We were kind of a make do and mend kind of family. So I grew up with people around me always finding a way to make something work. And we didn't have a lot of money to go buy things like clay or paint or, fabric. So I would make dolls' clothes from my big sister's hand-me-downs. She would have had a lovely frock, and rather than throw it away, I would cut it up and make it into things. And so my mother would unravel sweaters and re-knit them. So that was something that it was around me as I was growing. And so it was natural to kind of refashion things into other things and never throwing anything away. There's always a use for something. If, your kitchen towels are dirty and used, well, wash them and use them for stuffing and make a teddy bear. So that's a lot of where I came from and who I am. And I've kind of carried that with me everywhere I go. In addition to my vinyl record collection, which I have also carried with me everywhere I go. Oh, I got the Beatles, I got Abbey Road, I've got the White Album, all of the big Beatles albums. I have David Bowie, I've got Genesis, got all kinds of folk albums, James Taylor, Carly Simon, a lot from the 70s and the 80s is when I collected. So I would literally, when I was a kid, I would sit with my record player and put an LP on and sit on the floor and sew. And that would be, what I did as a little girl. Or I would get plasticine and make things like pretend jewelry with plasticine. So every one of those record albums is kind of like a diary in and of itself. If I put that record on, I remember exactly where I was, what time it was, who my friends were, what the problems were at the time. It all comes flooding back. So nobody gets those. They're staying with me until I die. Good. Well, I believe that, one of the reasons that we're in such a mess globally is because we've become such a consumerist, disposable culture. And, one of the other things that I do that I think is important is most of the, like I said, most of the fabrics and the yarns and everything I use, I buy at Goodwill stores. It's very rare for me to go out and buy anything new. If I can get stuffing for the dolls or wire or yarn or fabric at the Goodwill store, I'll do that. And I'll use that in all of my dolls so that I'm not, again, adding to other crap, which people collect. I'm doing my part, if you like, to try and recycle some stuff rather than it just getting thrown into a landfill, And I enjoy that. It's one of my favorite things is to go to a thrift store, and I do it about once a month. And, Jim will confirm that when I go, I just disappear for hours. And I'll be walking around, looking at stuff and saying, oh, the skirt on that dress would be lovely in a quilt, or that yarn would make really good hair on a doll. And so I won't spend a lot of money. I'll be out for hours and I have a blast and fabrics get recycled. So win-win. Yes, I actually my corporate life was because I was the vice president and I controlled large call centers, so usually I was managing hundreds or up to thousands of people, which meant that I, had large team meetings and stuff like that. So communicating with people was never an issue for me. But what I found that the art actually brought to that experience was that, you know, I was constantly looking for new ways, different ways to get people motivated and interested and to enjoy their jobs. You know, I mean, my sentiment was always, you spend most of your life here. So what can we do to make it at least pleasant while you're doing it? So I would do all kinds of different contests that I would run. And 9 times out of 10, the contests that people would vote for that they liked the most were ones where I would give the team a challenge to create something like a diorama or, you know, a paper banner, or and then they'd have a week to do it, and then I would come and judge all the stuff. And so that I kind of brought the art into that, and I think it not only helped with the motivation on the actual floor, the people doing the job, but it helped me too, because it kind of broke the constant stress and pressure of, you know, meeting goals and, you know, having to constantly get bigger goals and meet them. And, you know, it's very high pressure. So doing that just for a bit of fun and having a bit of artistic, you know, dick around was good for me, and it was good for everybody else. So again, a kind of a win-win, which is where I go to with most things. And interestingly, I found that the more stressful it became, the more I would feel the need to go inward and focus on a, you know, creating a piece of work at home, because that was something I could almost be very meditative, and still am while I'm doing stuff. But it would shut off all the noise for me and allow me to just be here with my creation. So very definitely kind of a hand-in-hand approach. Even when I was in the corporate world, the art never went away. It's oxygen. You know, we've been married now, I think 8 years, and we met each other 10 years ago. But we found that, you know, we kind of have gotten into our own little groove here. And whereas right at the beginning, we were very social and, you know, would have people over and stuff all the time, we've kind of gradually had been moving away from that. And then social distancing and lockdowns came in. And so when everybody else was kind of like, lockdown, we're like, what? It's the way we live, you know? But so it hasn't really changed much of our life. I, for the first, you know, 6 or 7 months, was terrified because I have COPD. And so that's a condition you can't take chances with. But I'm vaccinated now. And so the first thing I did when I got my vaccine after a couple of weeks that had elapsed was go to the Goodwill because I missed it so much. Oh, it's fine. I mean, you know, I'm older, so I'm never going to be back to my 30s in how I am. But the spinal surgery was miraculous for me because the spinal cord had been compromised, and I couldn't walk. I couldn't use my legs, and my arms were starting to deteriorate. I couldn't pick them up or do anything. But then I had the spinal surgery, which instantaneously I could start to feel like my feet and my fingers again. And over the last few years, you know, I've done a lot in terms of doing yoga and, you know, working out with little weights. And I'm very, before my surgery, I would do yoga when I felt like it, which wasn't very often. But since my surgery and my physiotherapy, and I met the best physiotherapist in the world, this little Swedish lady who I adore. And she basically brought me back from looking like this little frail old bent over lady to being me again, and kind of instilled in me this feeling that no, I have to do these things. I have to do yoga. I have no choice. I have to exercise. I have no choice. And so by doing all of that, I'm very active again. And, you know, I get tired earlier than I did 30 years ago, but I feel like I was given a whole new lease on life, and so I ain't gonna waste it. hmm I made a big diorama, which is on my website. When Trump was elected president, I had a huge problem with that. I became very active on Twitter. I amassed a couple of thousand followers just on, you know, my political threads. But I found that it was almost consuming me, and I didn't think that was very healthy. And so the way that I exorcised that was I said to Jim, okay, I need a head, hands, and feet, and I'm making Trump, so the head has to be Trump. And it took me about 2 months, but in that 2 months, I could almost kind of purge all of my negativity and get back to a more objective stance. And so the diorama, it's again, it's humorous. If you look on the back, which is a representation of the wall, you'll see posters and stuff like you would on any wall, but it's clearly poking, you know. Um, and in the wall itself, I'm building him into the wall. And there's a little trowel and, you know, and a picture of his dad. And so that whole thing and all of the detail that went with it took a couple of months, but it kept me sane. I believe it kept me sane. And I'm thinking, I did another diorama a long while back, actually, that got into Art Doll magazine, Art Doll Quarterly, featured the diorama, and it's Rumpelstiltskin with his spinning wheel turning straw into gold. So when I get an inspiration for a diorama, that's kind of the best of all, because I can make a piece that draws on multiple skills. I need to knit little sweaters or crochet, you know, a shawl or paint a wall, or so every one of the skills that I'm okay in, I can bring together in one place. And those are just the most fun of everything I do, because it's a little bit of everything. And it keeps me interested and occupied and inspired for long periods of time. So I will have to do another diorama. I'm actually thinking right now of possibly doing creepy dollhouse. Who knows? It's in the thought stage right now, but that's a big diorama. My dogs, I adore dogs. I adore animals. I'm not a vegetarian, but I'm going to change that very soon, because the more I get involved with animals, the more I love them and the more I can connect with them. And my dog, Baldric, is not the smartest animal in the world, but he is loving, he is caring, he is supportive, he if one of the other dogs yells in pain, Baldric will be the first one there. You know, he's just a total sweetheart, and I don't know what I would do without him. Right now, we are about to, probably in a few days, introduce my first grandchild, who was born 8 weeks ago. Introduce him to the dogs, and his parents, my son and his wife, are nervous. I'm not nervous. You know, the dogs will be curious and they'll get over their curiosity and then they'll be fine. But they're new parents, and so they're worried about everything. We all do, you know. But I'm excited to see what happens there in a few days. But, you know, I mean, every day I have to at least once go and just sit outside on my patio. I have hummingbird feeders all over the yard. I have suet feeders all over the yard. So I get a lot of birds that come, and hummingbirds particularly I adore. And so I'll sit out there with my dog and we'll just listen, you know. And I have to do that at least once every day, just to remind me that there are more important things, some of which we don't even know. But if we meditate and slow down a bit, we can usually pick up on them. They're all around. Okay, so several years ago, when I was still very sick, I hadn't yet had my surgery, and pretty much all I could do was sit. And I could use my hands from the wrists down, but I could just sit. And I'm not the type of person that can just sit. I have to do something else, whether it's sit and read or sit and do crosswords or watch TV. But even watching TV, I don't feel like I'm doing anything. So I decided I wanted to make a doll while I was sitting there. And I thought, you know what? Alice Cooper lives in Phoenix. He lives not far away from us. And he has a restaurant in Phoenix. And he kind of, you know, is creepy, but not. So he was a perfect, you know, idea for a new doll. And so I asked Jim, I'm like, can you make me a head, hands, and feet of Alice Cooper? But I want the feet to be boots, black boots. And I want his face, you know, exaggerated somewhat. So Jim gave me that. And then I went and I made his little leather coat and his top hat. And I was so pleased with him when I'd finished him. And so I looked around and I thought, well, we should send it to him. I know that he does charity work. Maybe he can do something with it. So I tracked down his charity in Phoenix, which is the Solid Rock Foundation. And he does a lot for disadvantaged youth. And he brings them in and they learn how to play musical instruments and do art. And so I reached out to them and said, you know, this is what we've created. I'd like to donate it to you, and maybe you can auction it or something. And they were absolutely thrilled. You know, they invited us down to the foundation and we gave them the doll. And I was really happy it was going to a good home. And, you know, I took pictures of it and stuff. And about a month later, I got a, you know, 10 by 11, 11 by 8 signed photograph from Alice saying thank you very much. But the following, that was around about, I think, August of maybe 2013. And then we got tickets to his Solid Rock annual rock band show, which he does every year for charity, and he sent us tickets for them. But then we got a request that for this Solid Rock thing, he was going to give this to his vendor at the concert. So we got to go to the concert. We saw the doll being given to his major vendor, and they gave us a shout out, which was wonderful. And then in the following year, they reached out to us again and said they would actually like to commission about a dozen Alice's, because every year he also does a golf tournament for charity in Phoenix, and wanted to give these to each of his vendors. And I guess there were a dozen vendors. So for a period of about, I think it was 2 straight months, Jim and I had a production line going on the dining room table. And I have pictures of all of these Alice's in various stages of production. And I made different clothing for each of them, and they each had a little golf club and a ball. And so that was quite a production, but they were all commissioned. They were absolutely thrilled with them. And all of those Alice's are now out in the world. So that made us very happy. In fact, this last year, 2020, and this year, 2021, with everything that's happened with COVID, and Jim and I realizing that we actually work and live very well together in the same place 24/7. Who'd have thunk it? And we help each other with, ideas on, well, yes, I really like that. And I think it would be better if. And we do that a lot with each other's work, and we're bouncing off of each other. And we each, in our own way, are starting to get some traction out in the art world. So I think that while 2020 for us was a very inward looking year in terms of what are we good at? What do we really want to be doing? How do we really want to live our lives? And we pretty much have decided we want to live as small as we can, buying from small businesses, needing small, not wanting a lot, recycling things as much as we can. So I think we came to all of those conclusions, and by going inward and evaluating. And I think in 2021, it's going to be the year that we go, okay, here we are. We are 100% artists now, and this is what we do. And want to start actually teaching people how it's done, I guess. Teaching some of these old skills. In my case, I do a lot of very old skills, which are in danger of just evaporating if people don't start adopting them and doing them again. So I'd like to think that I can help with that. And so that's how where I see us going this year. And we're healthy. Okay, I'm very good at this because I'm very picky about this. So you must boil the water, even though for the sake of, expeditious tea making, I will microwave if I'm in a hurry, but boil the water in a kettle, make sure it's boiling, have a teapot. And in your teapot, you have 1 tea bag for however many people will be drinking tea, and 1 for the pot. So if you have 2 people for tea, then you'll have 3 tea bags, 1 for everyone, one for the pot. Make sure you put the boiling water over that and then let it sit. If you have a tea cozy, even better. I have a tea cozy. I made it. I sewed it. I'll take a picture of it and show it to you. Put the tea cozy on and let it sit for a few minutes, 3 minutes, something like that. Then you're ready to pour. Milk first. This is a very important point. British people will kill you if you put your milk in after your tea. So put the milk in the cup, then pour your tea on it and enjoy it. Perfect. If you like sugar, have sugar. I don't.